guys, Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you my review plus on-feet video of the brand new Nike Mercurial Superfly 5. Now, as I'm sure a lot of you guys already know, this shoe has been unveiled, but is not yet available. They will be available to the general public as of June 2nd, so we're still about a month out until, like I said, you can buy a pair for yourself. But in the meantime, I did manage to get a pair a little bit early, and of course, we're going to be doing a complete overview on the shoe, and expect to see more videos on the Superfly 5 in the very near future on this channel. As you guys can see, this particular colorway, one of quite a few we did get to see at the press event, does come with a string bag. The string bag is Volt Yellow in color, black strings, it has a black Mercurial logo on the front, and then a little graphic here that actually mimics the Flyknit pattern on the actual shoe and the colorway in general. In today's video, we're going to be going over all the tech specs, new performance features, changes from the Superfly 4, of course. We're going to take a look at the fit and feel of the shoe on feet, the weight, and essentially everything you need to know about this brand new shoe from Nike. So again, if you're interested in learning more, stick around and watch the entire video. And with that being said, let's get right into the review. To start things off, let's go over all the tech specs and talk about some of the differences between the Superfly 4 and the new Superfly 5. Now, obviously, just like the Superfly 4, it's still a Flyknit upper with a mid-cut design. That aspect of the shoe, which is kind of the heart and soul of what made the Superfly 4 so special, remains on the Superfly 5. With that being said, they've made some pretty heavy modifications to the actual Flyknit construction, which changes the fit and feel of the shoe in what I would say is a pretty positive way. I really like how this feels out of the box. Now, the upper features their brand new Speed Rib 3D texturing construction. So basically what they've done with this new upper is they've added a lot of texture to the upper. So in a certain way, it does compare a little bit more closely to the current Magista Obra than the previous Superfly 4. The texture is a little bit heavier than what you get on the Obra, but still not something that, in my opinion, has a major impact on the overall touch and experience of playing in the shoes. With that being said, this particular design also allows them to incorporate a lot more structure into the shoe, and that's not to say that the structure on the Superfly 4 was an issue. It locked your foot in place and was very, very responsive. But this shoe, when you put it on, given the tweaks to the upper, given the tweaks to the shape of the shoe, and given the significant change in the sole plate, it fits better than the Superfly 4 is kind of what I'm getting at, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail during the on-feet portion of the video, so stick around for that. So in regards to touch, the upper with this new Speed Rib kind of design basically has raised surfaces, so it's going to add a little bit more abrasion or a little bit more friction between your foot, the upper of the shoe, and of course the ball. Again, the amount of extra grip that you're actually getting from this texturing is fairly minimal. There's no actual grip element to the shoe. It's still a Flyknit base to the upper, and then of course you have your clear polyurethane Nike skin layer on top. They've actually incorporated an extra layer here going around the rim of the sole plate, as you guys can see, mainly in the forefoot and toe box area, the high wear zone. So that's kind of a cool little extra feature, mainly there again for durability reasons. But like I said, there's really no added grip or a change in the actual finish of the surface of the upper when compared to the Superfly 4 or the Magista Obra for that matter. It's that same Nike skin covering. So again, it's not going to have that sticky feel on the ball. There's just a little bit more texturing to the surface that, like I said, doesn't really come through when the shoe is actually on your foot. You don't get to feel that texturing, but obviously it is there when you're making contact with the ball. Now the Speed Ribs vary in thickness, which is really interesting. The black parts that you can see on this particular colorway are basically raised a little bit higher. These parts are thicker, 2.5 millimeters in thickness, while the middle parts there, the parts in orange or the parts in pink on this side, are as thin as 1 millimeter. So you basically have a variation of really thin, a little bit thicker, really thin, or really bit thicker. And even at 2.5 millimeters, that's still very, very thin. It's such a small thickness, you can barely make it with your fingers there. But the shoe definitely does feel a little bit thicker overall in comparison to the original Superfly 4. Still thin, definitely thinner than what you get on the Magista Obra, especially given the liner on this shoe, which is a little bit more minimal than what we got on the Superfly 4. There is still a synthetic liner on the inside, but it's fairly thin and it's not as noticeable when you actually put the shoe on, especially in the toe box and forefoot area. This shoe does feel a little bit more sock-like and a little bit more flexible out of the box in regards to the upper when compared to the Superfly 4. So again, part of what made the Superfly 4 such a success was the Flyknit upper, the mid-cut design, and the sock-like experience that it did provide once the shoe was broken in. You're still going to get that from the Superfly 5, but I guess it feels a little bit more natural is the best way to put it, both in terms of how it wraps your foot as well as the less significant liner, which of course is due to this new speed rib system, which just allows them to incorporate more structure into the actual Flyknit upper so they don't have to have as much structure in the actual liner, which again, it's a really good system. So like I said, the texturing obviously is going to impact the touch in a minor way, but the bigger impact that it has on the grand scheme of things when you're actually wearing the shoe is the structure that it provides. Also included, kind of a carryover feature from the Superfly 4, is your Flywire or Brio cable system that's actually hidden within the actual graphic itself. So obviously the thicker strips are going to have more structure to them in general, but where they actually line up with the laces, you have Brio cables running through the middle. So when you pull the laces tight, it pulls on those cables, pulls on basically all these faux cables, if you will, and you just get a lot of structure in general from the upper. You can see the cables are actually there. The pattern ends here at the bottom, so you can see the cables a little bit more clearly. But just like the Obra, they're kind of hidden within the actual Flyknit construction, but they are in fact there, and like I said, do their job as far as keeping your foot locked in place. And again, the general way that this shoe fits and feels on your foot is quite a bit different from the Superfly 4. Still a tight fit, still kind of a zero extra space on the inside type feel as well, but definitely a little bit better given the changes in the upper as well as given the changes with the sole plate. Laces still run through the middle, as you guys can see. The upper does also feature ACC all conditions control acting as your wet control element, something we've seen on Nike's top end models for a number of years now. It's basically their wet control element that, in my opinion, is not a make or break feature by any means. It's something they include, and there's really nothing else to really highlight with that particular aspect of the shoe itself. Now, laces run through the middle. It still features the elasticated one-piece Flyknit. So the part that is covered in Nike skin where you see all the fancy patterns, that doesn't have any stretch to it. It's more structured, whereas the elasticated aspect of the actual upper doesn't have the structure to it. So when you put your foot inside, the center part kind of stretches out a little bit, and then it kind of compresses to your foot like a pair of socks would do. And then of course you do have the collar itself, which does have a different pattern, as you guys can see, but doesn't actually really feel different on your foot. A lot of people with the dynamic fit collar have this misconception that it's going to offer some kind of ankle support. It doesn't. There's no structure to this. It's basically just an extension piece that honestly doesn't need to be there, but they include it because one, it looks cool, and two, it does change the way the shoe feels on your foot. It feels more like the shoe is flowing from your leg onto your foot as opposed to just being directly strapped to your foot, if that makes any sense. And of course, it does change up the fit of the shoe in the heel area a little bit, something we'll talk about a little bit more later during the on feet portion of the video, because I will say that this shoe does feel more comfortable in the heel area than any of the current mid-cut models on offer from Nike. You can see as well that they did a really good job to make sure that there's no stiff material around the back of the collar, which is something that a lot of people didn't really like about the current mid-cut models from Nike. So it's particularly soft back here, and there's really nothing to cause any kind of unnecessary abrasion, if you will. It still has an internal plastic heel counter, pretty much the same as what we got on the Superfly 4. Inside the shoe, there is a padded synthetic leather liner with a little bit more padding than what we got on the Superfly 4. And again, the fit in the heel area does feel a little bit more comfortable out of the box, something we'll talk about more in detail. Insole, fully removable. It features a mesh liner on top, and it's made from a brand new foam, which is actually really, really nice. It's like it's kind of like an Ortholite, but it's a little bit more dense. It has this really kind of firm, kind of memory foam feel to it that I really like. They added some texturing to it at the bottom, so that's going to help it from not slide around basically. And you're also going to notice that it's not completely flat, and that plays into the actual new Soleplate design, which is cleverly named the Nike plate. That isn't completely flat either. So this is a kind of a new concept from Nike. Obviously with the Mercurial line, we've always seen a good variety of sole plates. I think the biggest change, obviously coming from the Superfly 4, is the fact that this is not made from carbon fiber. Every Superfly prior to the 5 has featured a carbon fiber sole plate, but they went back to the drawing board and basically came up with this, which is a single layer of plastic material. It utilizes a brand new manufacturing process. where they use, basically a vacuum forming process is how they describe it, which allows them to eliminate unnecessary layers, which in turn makes the shoe lighter. So in comparison to the carbon fiber sole plate on the Superfly 4, this is supposed to be 40% lighter, and you guys will see how much these shoes weigh a little bit later during the weigh-in portion of the video. So what's kind of interesting about this sole plate, you can see that it does have a lot of shape to it at the bottom. It's not completely flat, and that is actually by design. They worked with a specific physiotherapist. I'm not sure what his name was. I'm not even sure if they mentioned it in the press release, but basically they made a shoe that is anatomically shaped to fit better and secure your foot better. So because it's not completely flat, because it's made to actually fit the shape of your foot and move with the curves of your foot, there's supposed to be a couple benefits, which is a reduce in stud pressure. It's going to decrease unwanted movement on the inside of the shoe, and because it fits better and your foot's not sliding around, it's supposed to maximize energy transfer as well. Are all of these features actually something, or all of these benefits something that you're actually going to notice when wearing the shoe? Not necessarily, but I will say the way the shoe fits and feels on your foot, at the bottom of your feet especially, is particularly unique. It has a different feel. It's not weird by any means, but it doesn't feel completely flat, which is kind of interesting and something I'm really excited to try out. I feel like it's one of those things that, depending on the shape of your foot and depending on your tolerance for, I guess, not completely flat shoes, it may cause some discomfort during the break-in process, perhaps some foot cramping for a lot of people. But for the most part, it feels pretty good on your foot. It holds your foot, the bottom of your foot, very nicely. Like I said, it's supposed to decrease the amount of slippage you're going to have on the inside of the shoe, which, given that you have the right size, it should do quite effectively. And the overall fit of the shoe with the upper in combination with the sole plate does feel a little bit better than the Superfly 4 as well. So the benefits that they're claiming are something that you can actually feel when you put these shoes on for the first time. As far as the sole plate and stud pattern is concerned, they really emphasize braking and accelerating in a linear pattern, so in a straight line. They designed this particular stud pattern for the first time basically using a computer program. What do they call it? They called it a virtual analysis program, where basically they would use this program, run different stud patterns through it, and it would basically tell them which was the most efficient. And then once they came up with a design, they gave it to actual professional players to test out and get some feedback from there. And ultimately they came up with this, which is a pretty significant change for the Mercurial line, I'll say. The Mercurial line has seen quite a few different changes in stud patterns over the years, all of which have been very, very good and very aggressive. This time around, as you guys can see, they've utilized this kind of chevron shape. It's a small V, if you will, an open V. And all the studs, what's different is that all the studs are the same size, they're the same length, and basically all they've done is just change the angle of the studs depending on where it's positioned. So the heel studs are basically angled straight up and down, straight sideways, as you guys can see. So when you're actually planting to stop, it's supposed to allow you to brake a little bit more efficiently, while the studs at the front, as you guys can see, especially these front 5, are angled in such a way where they're going to basically claw the ground and allow you to push forward, give you as much bite as possible. And based on how it looks, I anticipate this working extremely well. It looks extremely aggressive. They also mentioned that they did their best to kind of fill in what would normally be empty space on the shoe, and they did that pretty effectively. You have 2 really big studs pretty close to the edge of the toe, which is kind of unusual, and then 2 more not too far back behind that. Reminds me a little bit of the positioning that we see on the Puma Evo Power, actually, but obviously instead of conical studs, they are these very aggressive bladed studs. So really, really curious to try this out. I expect it to perform extremely well. That's kind of a main characteristic and something that you always expect from the Mercurial line. But like I said, the amount of new features that they've incorporated on the Superfly 5 makes this shoe feel quite a bit different. Again, it's a similar concept, being a mid-cut Flyknit shoe with a bladed stud pattern, but the way it feels on your foot, like I said, is a lot different than I was honestly expecting. So overall, really, really happy with the changes that they've made. Is it a major improvement? Yes and no. But I definitely do like what I see so far from the Superfly 4. As far as weight is concerned, I thought we'd compare the Superfly 4 directly to the Superfly 5 in real time using a scale, just so we can see exactly what the difference is. They're claiming the sole plate is 40% lighter than the 4, so obviously it should be a little bit lighter. The question is how much. So both of these shoes, brand new condition, both the same size, 9 US, so this is a very fair comparison. We'll start off with the Superfly 4, throw them on the scale, and you can see that they weigh in at 7.2 ounces, the equivalent of 205 grams. It's a lightweight shoe. I think everybody understands that. Remember those numbers. We'll pull these off the scale and we'll throw on the Superfly 5, and you can see that they weigh in at 6.75 ounces, the equivalent of 191 grams. So almost half an ounce lighter than the Superfly 4, which is not overly significant, honestly. The weight of the shoe in hand, yes, it feels a little bit lighter. On feet, it's not quite as noticeable. I think the biggest noticeable difference between the 4 and the 5 in terms of how they feel on your feet is more so just the general feel, the way the upper wraps your foot, the way the sole plate feels on the bottom of your feet. It's a very different type of sensation when you're actually wearing the Superfly 5 versus the previous Superfly 4. But from a weight standpoint, 191 grams, 6.75 ounces, that's pretty lightweight. It's not quite as light as what we have right now from the Nike Mercurial Vapor 10, but it is less than the Superfly 4. I feel like the overall fit of the shoe is improved as well. So like I said, from a weight standpoint, they made the shoe lighter without taking away anything that I feel you got on the Superfly 4. So all in all, it's still a lightweight shoe, a little bit lighter than the previous model. And if you want that lightweight feel, you're gonna get it from the Superfly 5. Aesthetically, I actually like the look of the Superfly 5. I know a lot of people, especially when they first unveiled it, were unhappy with the positioning of the Nike swoosh, and that it does look a lot like some of the American football cleats that Nike has had out for the last year or two. But personally, I don't mind the look at all. This is what I believe will be one of the original colorways, or one of the first colorways for the Superfly 5 upon its release June 2nd. As you guys can see, it features a combination of what is an orange, black, as well as pink, where it's basically split right down the middle. So the lateral side of the shoe is orange and black with a little bit of pink kind of within the actual detail, as you guys can see. Then it kind of fades off into black at the heel, which is kind of a cool little look. And then on the medial side, as you guys can see, it is pink and black stripes, and then again it tapers off at the heel going to solid black. You have Volt Yellow Nike swooshes on both sides of the shoe, as well as your Mercurial branding in Volt Yellow at the heel. Collar all black, laces all black. You have a kind of an interesting little detail here in kind of matte and clear black finishes going down the back. And then the sole plate, as you guys can see, solid black in color with a Volt Yellow Nike swoosh and translucent Volt Yellow studs. So overall, I don't love this particular colorway, but I don't mind the look of the shoe. Let me know what you guys think though down below in the comment section. Do you like the look of the Superfly 5? Why or why not? And with that being said, let's move on to the on-feet portion of the video so we can get a better idea as to how these shoes fit and of course what the sizing is like. Alright, so here is a look at the Superfly 5's on feet. On my left foot I have the stock black laces that come with the shoes, and on my right foot I have a pair of neon yellow reflective SR4U replacement laces. If you're interested in a pair of replacement laces for yourself, the website to go to is www.sr4ulaces.com. Find a direct link to that website down below in the description of this video. Now, in terms of how these things fit and feel on feet, they're actually pretty comfortable from right out of the box. In comparison to the Superfly 4, I think the biggest thing you're going to notice is, one, this fits a little bit more snug. They tweak the shape ever so slightly to where I think it fits a little bit better than the Superfly 4. Two, the feel underfoot, the curvature of the sole plate, the fact that it's not completely flat and it has some shape to it is something that doesn't necessarily feel weird, but you will immediately notice that when you put them on your feet. And three, the heel area. It's a lot more comfortable in the heel area when compared to all the current mid-cut models from Nike, be it the Superfly 4, the Obra, or the Phantom 2. The biggest thing they changed is mainly how the structure in the heel is managed. With the current ones, the structure comes up a little bit higher, and then at the very end where it transitions from structure to collar, it kind of curves in, and that digs into people's heel area and just takes some getting used to. You have to break them in slowly in order to avoid discomfort. With this shoe, the actual structure of the heel where it transitions into the collar is a little bit lower and it goes straight up. So there's nothing really to dig into your heel. They increase the amount of padding in the liner area as well, which also makes them feel a little bit more comfortable. And it's just kind of a more open, I guess, normal fit in general. It doesn't have that unusual a feel. It's definitely different from a standard low-cut shoe, but not quite the same as the current mid-cut model. So overall, in that particular aspect, which is a major key in your experience of this shoe, I definitely think that that is a major improvement. As far as the upper is concerned, it feels pretty good out of the box. The way they designed this shoe with this kind of line design, all the structure is lateral and medial. So when you push off side to side, the actual Flyknit structure is running in the correct direction. And then when you bend your foot, you have those thinned out areas within the actual stripes. That just makes for a good amount of flexibility. There's not much restrictiveness to the upper. Even from out of the box, it does get more flexible over time as you break them in. And again, it feels really, really nice. Again, the shape has been tweaked, the sole plate has been tweaked to where I feel like the shoe just fits a little bit better in general. As far as width is concerned, it's got the same general kind of width as the Superfly 4 and Mercurials in general. Not particularly wide, not super narrow either. If you've worn Mercurials in the past, you shouldn't have any issues in the Superfly 5. But keep in mind the shoe isn't really going to stretch and it does have a tighter fit overall. So if you don't like that, probably not the best option. And if you do have really, really wide feet, probably not a great option either. As far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing my usual size 9 US, which is the same size that I wore in the Superfly 4, and the fit and length is absolutely perfect. So if you are looking to order a pair of these for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. All right, guys, that's it for my review of the Nike Mercurial Superfly 5. Expect to see more content of this shoe on my channel in the very near future, including a playtest video. If you're looking for more info right now, be sure to check out the review page on my website. That'll be the very first link down below in the description of this video. On that page, you'll find the high quality pictures that I took myself of this exact pair. That'll give you a better idea as to how they actually do look in person. And then once they are available, there will also be buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes. You'll be able to pick them up below the normal retail price, which is yet to be announced, by the way. If you guys do have any questions at all regarding the Superfly 5, leave them down below in the comments, and I definitely will get an answer out to you. If you enjoyed today's video, found it helpful and informative, be sure to support it with a like. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. And as always, thanks for watching.